Hi, this is Aaron McLaughlin with the Happy Lab at Georgia State, and I'm going to be taking you through how to do a moderation analysis in your research. Before we get started though, let's ask two questions. One, what is a moderation analysis? And two, what questions are a moderation analysis answering? So on your right, we have this document that shows a conceptual diagram of a moderation analysis. And a moderation analysis is when there's one variable, m, affecting how another variable, x, affects a third variable, y. And so variable m here is saying that, or it's answering the questions, when does x affect y, or under what circumstances does x affect y. So what do you need to have in order to do a moderation analysis? One, you need SPSS, statistical software. Two, you need process. To get process, go to afas.com and then go to this tab on the left, select process macro, go to the download, and then click to download. And when you download the macro from process, you will get a package, and in that package will come a PDF of templates. And this has many different models you can use for simple and complex models of moderation as well as mediation analyses, which you learned most likely before this video. One more thing you need is you need to have multiple variables in your data. So you do not run a moderation if you're just looking at two variables. You need to at least have three variables. So how do you run a moderation analysis? Well, let's look at this data set here. We have data from students who were seminary students, and they responded to a variety of measures looking at humility, religious orientation, spirituality, personality, morals, and forgiveness measures, sociopolitical leaning, whether more conservative or liberal. And we are going to look at this data set, and we are going to run a regression. We are going to run a moderation. And these are the headings that we'll go through: analyze, regression, process, and then we'll select model 1. So go to your data, and you're going to click analyze, regression, process, and the first thing you need to do is have model 1 selected, which is your moderation. Then the variables that we selected from here are going to be intellectual humility, which is the independent variable, spiritual humility, which is the dependent variable, and we're going to hypothesize that the moral foundation of purity is influencing when, or under which circumstances, intellectual humility predicts spiritual humility in this sample. Before we click OK though, let's go to our options, and you want to make sure that mean center for products is checked, and that in the conditioning Johnson-Neiman is checked. And then click OK. So in our output, as you see, we've got a pretty large output, and so we're going to go through this step by step and interpreting what it means. First, you see just your model. So you have your independent variable, intellectual humility, your dependent variable, spiritual humility, or the predictor and the criterion variables. And then you have your moderator variable, the moral foundation of purity. Here, our whole model, you can see with the R squared, is predicting 23% of the variance in spiritual humility. And then you look at the significance values under P, and you see that every single variable here, as well as the interaction of intellectual humility and purity are significant at the p's less than 0.05 level. So if you look at your beta weights or your regression coefficients, you see that both purity and intellectual humility are positive. And that's just meaning that it's a positive relationship between those variables and spiritual humility. However, something interesting is that when you look at the interaction of intellectual humility and purity, we see a negative relationship, meaning that while independently intellectual humility and purity predict or have a positive relationship with spiritual humility, together they have a negative relationship when they're interacting and predicting the outcome of spiritual humility. And we see down here that the R squared change, that is the interaction effect, is predicting an additional 1.36% change in the variance of our outcome variable spiritual humility. Down here though, the Johnson-Neiman technique answers another question, and that is, where is this interaction significant? And we can see the p-values that our interaction is significant when the score for purity is 0.3269 above the mean score of purity in this sample, and then below that score. So pretty much the lower scores in this sample of purity have a significant relationship in that when it's interacting with intellectual humility, it's predicting a decrease score in spiritual humility. So in summary, a moderation is looking at when or under which circumstances one variable is affecting another variable. And so it's looking at how the variable m is moderating the relationship, almost like a volume control, turning up or down the relationship between x and y.